Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
Hi, I'm Eric Grant from Sailrite. In this tutorial video, we're going to show you how to make wire-supported fabric deck railings. These fabric panels are supported with 2 runs of a stainless steel wire, one at the top and one at the bottom. And we use a vinyl mesh fabric, and they really look great on porches and decks. We're going to show you how to sew them up and install them. The greatest thing about installing these fabric fence panels is the cost. It really only costs about $80 per 8-foot section of fencing here, and that includes the fabric and all the stainless steel hardware that you can get from Sailrite. You may be asking, why'd we build such a crazy deck? Well, this deck is made for a sailboat to be brought in here next spring, and we're going to redo all kinds of canvas kits and show you how to build each one of them. So stay tuned for that.
These fabric deck railings look gorgeous. They can easily be sewn with most home sewing machines. The first step is to install the lag eye bolts, then we'll take measurements. Let's get started and show you how it's done.
I have a drill bit here that is a little bit smaller than the threads of my eye bolt, and I need to go the depth of the eye bolt all the way. I've measured 1 inch up from the deck and in the middle of this post. If you have eye bolts on the other side, you may want to consider whether you're going to run into them with the length of the next one, and this one would touch it, so I'm going to do it a little bit offset so it doesn't run right into that. So I'm going to go up a little bit, teeny bit higher than 1 inch so that I don't run into that one. So right here, and we'll drill through. Usually you have to exit the bit to get all the fibers of the wood fibers out. We're going to use this to tension the fabric fence, so I'm just using a screwdriver here and running it in the eye, and I'll leave about 3 threads exposed from the end. I'll show you when we're done here.
We're not driving the eye bolt all the way in, so we can use it to tension the panel once it's installed.
Okay, I'm not going to drive it in anymore. You can count the threads, 1, 2, 3, and you should have the eye bolt going vertical like this, not horizontal. And we'll install all the eye bolts at the top here. I've already got it marked. We're 1 inch from the top of our head rail, and we are in the middle of the post, so we're going to do the same thing here.
Once the eye bolts are screwed into all 4 corners, it's time to take measurements so we know exactly how to cut our fabric to size.
So what we want to do is we want to take a measurement from post to post. So inside post to inside post. The next task is to measure from the inside of the eye.
We're measuring from the inside eye at the bottom to the inside eye at the top. We're going to show it in an illustration to show it more clearly. To calculate the cut size fabric, take that length measurement you made and subtract 6 inches. That's the finished length. Then add 2 inches. That's the cut length. Next, take the height measurement from inside eye to inside eye and add 2 inches. 2 inches will be used for a sleeve at the top and the bottom. With those measurements and calculations in hand, it's now time to cut the fabric to size.
The first thing we're going to do is mark out a rectangle, and then we're going to add hollow to the top and bottom edges afterwards.
What's hollow? Let's explain.
So you'll notice that there's a hollow, which basically means that there's less fabric in the middle at the top and the bottom than there is on the sides. Without this hollow, even if your tensioned cable were tight, the panel wouldn't be nearly as tight as you see here. So the hollow is extremely important.
We're using a standard Pfeiffer text for this project. You could also use a Textiline. Our table is 72 inches long, so I have it squared up here at the corner, and we need a cut size of 84.5 by 33.5. So I'm going to make sure it's all straight here and then mark it at this corner. We're using a white scriball here. We also have a black, but for more natural colors, you can just use a number 2 pencil. Okay, we marked the corner. Now we're going to slide it up on the table here. So that's our 72 inch mark right there. So we need 12.5 more inches to get to our cut length, which is 84.5. So I'm just going to strike a line here. Okay. We're going to use a T-square to strike our line up for the height, and it's 33.5 inches. I'm going to put another line here so I can strike a straight line at 33.5 inches. Now we're going to take our straight edge and we're going to mark down the length of our panel. So now we're going to cut out a rectangle, and we're going to cut out the rectangle with scissors. We will show you how to use a hot knife to cut out the hollow later on, because it can help prevent the fibers on the Fivertex from coming out of the end.
At the two ends, we're going to create a 1-inch hem. That's the vertical sides.
We're going to do a 1-inch hem here on the two shorter edges, which is the outside edges of our panel. And I'm going to mark it 2 inches in with the scriball. And you can sharpen this scriball pencil with a regular pencil sharpener if necessary. We're going to apply a 1/4 inch basting tape right along this outside edge, all the way down. It's important that you get your basting tape from Sailrite because it's an acrylic based basting tape and not a rubber basting tape, so it won't yellow in the sun. Okay, we're going to peel off the transfer paper, and we're going to create our 1-inch hem here. Just fold up to the line. We started in the center and are working our way outwards. And we're going to do the same thing to the other end of this panel, but we won't show that. So we lined up the edge of our finished hem over here, the 1-inch finished hem, and we should have 10.25 inches over here, and this will confirm our measurement just to make sure that we don't screw up an entire panel, and we are good.
No matter what size your panel is, we need to create hollow at the top and the bottom edges. That's next.
So now we're going to put a little mark at the center of our panel. So I have this lined up to the outside edge, and it's 41.25 inches. So right there.
And that's the center for us. Yours will be different.
And we're going to do the same thing on this side. And we're going to mark this 1.5 inches up for our hollow. So right there. And we'll also do the same thing over here on this side, marking it 1.5 inches up. We use 1.5 inches as our basis point, and we want to keep that consistent even if we have really small panels or really large panels, just so everything looks uniform.
To create this hollow, we'll create a smooth curve from corner to corner, to the deepest part being 1.5 inches at the center.
So now we're going to add 1.5 inches of hollow, and we're using some Schedule 40 PVC because it has some flexibility. You can get it at a hardware store. You could also use something similar. So Eric's going to hold it right on our line over here, and I'm going to adjust out our curve, and then we're going to mark. And we're only marking half of this because the panel's so long. So we'll mark this half, and now we're going to come over here and mark the other half. So, and we want to make sure that this curve is naturally gentle. So it's not like we're bending it up like this or anything. We just need to make sure it's nice and gradual. So we want this curve to be nice and gradual with the max or the highest point here at the center where we marked, heading all the way down to the corners. And we're going to do the same thing that we did on this side over on this side of our panel. So the bottom or the top. So we're going to cut one side of the hollow with scissors and the other side with a hot knife to show you the differences. This is a brand new foot for Sailrite called the Precision Cutting Foot and Blade. And what it allows you to do is cut without a cutting glass. So I can actually just take this here. And we're using the Sailrite cordless hot knife. We also sell a corded version, but being untethered is very nice, so I prefer the cordless.
To show the difference of the cut edges, we're going to skip ahead to the point where the hem was created.
Notice that this is the side we cut with scissors, and you can actually see these little fibers. I don't know if you can see those little white fibers coming off. It's not a big deal, but if you find it unsightly, you're going to want to use a hot knife. Here's the side we cut with the hot knife, and you can see there's no filaments from the Fivertex sticking out anywhere on this edge. It's totally fine for the polyester fibers to stick out of the end of Fivertex. It won't get any worse over time, but some people don't like the look, so hot knifing is an option.
Now we'll go back to constructing the panel.
This is our scrap piece, and this is our mark in the center. We're going to cut it at this mark, and then cut off about 3 or 4 inches of material, and we're going to use these as reinforcements right at this edge here so that it doesn't abrade away the Fivertex. The wire doesn't. We're going to use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to strike our 1-inch hem. So that means we'll strike our line at 2 inches. So we'll just follow it down this edge and mark it as we go.
We'll be folding our fabric up to this line to create a sleeve for the wire. That'll be done in the next chapter.
And once we get to the finish with this side, we're going to do the same thing over on this side.
Next, we'll create the sleeve and insert the wire at the same time while we're creating the sleeve.
Now we're going to apply basting tape down this entire edge. Now I've got one of the reinforcement patches, and I'm going to put basting tape just right down the center of it. Peel off the transfer paper and just fold it in half here. And now I'm going to apply basting tape here on the top in the same manner. Peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and then I'm going to peel off just the end of this basting tape as well. So there we go. And I'm going to apply this so that the finished edge is outward, just a slight bit down from the top edge, just like that. And I'm going to do that at all four corners as I go around. Before we hem, we're going to cut the wire to size. This is a 3/32 stainless steel wire from Sailrite, and we want to make sure we have at least about 12 inches sticking out of this side and the other side. So we're going to go on the other side and then cut it to size. Okay, so this is a wire cutting tool we sell here at Sailrite, and I'm going to make sure there's about 10 to 12 inches here out the end, and then I'm just going to cut it. Okay, now we are going to fold over to our line we struck all the way down the length. And you'll notice it is curved because of the hollow. And we are pushing the wire in as we go up towards the top so that it doesn't stick to the basting tape. So we want to make sure the patch is, the wire is in the center of the patch here because this is where the most pressure is going to be from the tension. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side.
Sewing this vinyl mesh fabric is pretty easy. That's next.
We're using V92 and a number 20 needle, and we're going to test our tension here just to make sure everything's set up before we sew. So we'll sew a little bit. Pull it out. And our tension looks great. I'm going to place the magnetic sewing guide just inside the 3/4 inch mark on the plate. And I'm going to start sewing at one of my reinforced corners right here at the end. So I'm going to do a forward and a reverse here about 3 times just to make sure it's locked in place because this is where all of the stress is going to be. So forward, reverse. And I'm going to make sure I get all the way to the end. And now I'm just going to use the magnetic sewing guide and sew down the length of the fabric. Keep feeding the fabric in. Against our sewing guide makes it really easy. I'm not really even doing anything, I'm just guiding it along. So we're going to sew down to this end. And we're going to sew the same thing we did on the other end. We're going to sew through the reinforcement about 3 times in forward and reverse just to make sure we lock it in place before we turn our corner. And now I'm going to reverse back to where I think the turn is, which is probably about right here. I'll lift the foot with the needle buried, rotate the fabric, adjust it all, put the foot down, and I'm ready to sew again. And there's no need to reverse over here at the corner on the vertical side as long as you're pivoting. So if you need to make adjustments to your material, so you're going to want to stop with the needle buried and then just adjust your material and then keep going. So we're going to sew up to our previous stitch and then just do a little reversing here at the end. And there we go. And here's what the finished panel looked like. We'll go install it on our deck.
The process of securing the wire to each of the 4 eye bolts is the same, so we will only show it once. The top is already installed, as we're doing here. We will show installing it in detail at the bottom corner.
Okay, so we're going to install our shrink wrap on first, let it just hang. Now we can take our NiCoPress sleeve and install it. This goes through the eye, and then we run it back like this and go through our NiCoPress sleeve again. Now the other side isn't tight, so don't pull your cable through all the way. You just want to get this sleeve tight up against here, and don't worry about where your cable is since this is your first install. That looks good like that. Keep that eye as small as you can. And I'm going to crimp it here since I'm doing this all by myself.
No second helper, use vice grips to hold it in place.
There we go. So that should stay there. Now I'm going to take and compress my Nicer press sleeve with my tool. So with it vertical, it's not too hard to do it from an upward position. Start with the back of the Nicer press sleeve away from the eye. And I think I'm pretty good. Compress it there.
It needs to be compressed twice, one at the back and one at the front. Vice grips can now be removed.
There, I got it in almost the right position right there. Now I can press it. Beautiful. Good. So now we're going to cut it as short as we can without hurting the actual cable, like that. Now you have to prep this. Now see how this is back here like this? That would be terrible if we tensioned the other end, or if it was tensioned like this. It needs to be right on the end of the eye. Scoot your sleeve over top of the Nicer press like that, the shrink sleeve. That way the fabric can go all the way up against that with the other side. And you got to make sure this is here before you crimp the other side. It can actually move up here and you could have serious problems and have to cut your cable. So we'll check this before we crimp the other side.
Both runs of wire are attached at one post at the top and the bottom. Let's now work on the other post on the other end.
You'll have extra wire. So you want to pull this taut. We already have this other side attached in the same manner. We didn't show that. But we want to pull this tight so that you get this as tight as you possibly can. And this shrink wrap can actually go inside the sleeve a little bit, which I'm going to work it in there so that I can compress it a little bit. So I'm going to push it inside the sleeve. Even if it wrinkles a little bit, it's okay. So now pull if you need to get the excess out of the cable. So if you need to work this cable out, you can do that just by pulling on it. Now, once we have it fairly tight like this,
if the other end is secured, like ours is, you must check it before you secure the final end. Let's check it out.
Now you can see that eye, before you tension it, is in the correct spot. If it's up at the top or up at the bottom, it won't have enough tension. And this is about how I expect it to be. It'll have some sag until we actually tension it up. Because I'm doing this by myself, if you had a second helper, that would help. I'm going to use some vice grips here. These are just small vice grips. And I'm going to hold this in place so that I can crimp the Nicer press. So I'm going to hold it right there, kind of crimp it down. That way I don't have to worry about where the Nicer press is. I'm going to push this Nicer press sleeve up as far as I can up there. And then I'm going to compress it in channel number 2 of these Nicer press sleeve tool. So right there, oops, I'm going to start at the end first. Press once, and then we're going to move over to the front, and we're going to press again. And there, our Nicer press sleeve is installed. I can take off my vice grips, and now what I want to do is I want to cut this cable, and I'm going to use my cable cutter, being careful not to cut the other cable. Cut it fairly short, like that, and then take this sleeve and push it over the end of the cable and over the Nicer press sleeve like that, and that is installed.
All corners are attached. The fabric panel will not be tight until it is tensioned by turning the lag eye bolts. That's next.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to tension the eye bolts on this side so that those threads are basically buried. So I'm going to start with the top one. Doesn't really matter which one you start with. And I'm using a screwdriver to do this. And don't worry about the cable twisting. You don't have to go very far before it actually becomes pretty tensioned or comes under some tension. I might actually leave one thread exposed right now because I can come back to it later. We're going to do the same thing with this one. Now I'm just tensioning this one. I want to kind of do this like lug nuts on a car. You don't want to tension one down completely. You want to work from corner to corner.
Now we'll move to the other end's post.
So we're going to tension this up, and that'll draw the cable up beautifully. And I don't want it too tight at the top before I do it at the bottom too. as you can see, this is the tension that we got just from turning those eye bolts. And this is about the appropriate amount of tension at the top and also at the bottom. So this is perfect. So now we just use a heat gun, carefully melt the shrink tape. Don't get your vinyl too hot. You can get a little bit hot, but not too much. And you want to do it from both sides. There we go, that's nice. And we'll do that to all of them. This is a vinyl mesh fabric called PfeifferTech Standard. It has a fairly large open weave, and as you can see my hand and my body through the material. If you wanted a panel that had less visibility, you may want to choose a PfeifferTech Plus.
The fabric deck rails are installed. You may be asking, why do we not use deck boards? This platform is going to be used to show many canvas projects on boats, and we wanted a flat surface for the video camera gear to roll on. Be sure to check out the full materials and tools list in the description below. If you have any questions or comments about this project, be sure to give us a call or email us. We're glad to help. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.